All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to True Crime Loser. How you doing? All right. I got a lot to cover today. There's no time for Schmida updates. So, today we're finishing up George Huguely the fifth interrogation. George Huguely drunkenly blacked out, killed his ex-girlfriend. That's the that's the update. If this is the first video you are starting with, if you enjoy the show, think about supporting me on Patreon. There's a link in the description. Okay, so we're starting about 40 minutes into the hour-long interrogation, and at this point, George is just as relaxed as can be, just as relaxed as a Rich the Fifth could be. The fifth. And he's sipping a little water that they gave him. And he doesn't know that she's dead, at least in my opinion. And they've done a really good job to not divulge information that they didn't need to. And so he's sitting there just like, yeah, I wanted to talk. And I get the feeling that the detectives can't believe just how open he's being. Like at one point, they're like, was she screaming like when you were wrestling around on the floor? And he's like, no, but she probably should have been. And as an interrogator, you're not used to that answer. You're used to being like, no, I wasn't there. I wasn't even in the country at that moment. Georgie's like, yeah, she wasn't screaming, but she should have been because I was terrifying. So he kicks down the door, Shining style. They wrestle around, wrestle on the floor. At one point, her nose is bleeding. And so at this point, the female detective is like, you didn't think to call 911? Her nose is bleeding. You said she hit her head. And he's just like, no. There's no explanation of like, no, like, he's just like, nah, I didn't. I'm George Huguely the fifth. And they're building up to the point where they are going to tell her, George, she's dead. And they're building up, and the female officer is just killing it. She's like, you didn't call 911 when she had a bloody nose? And he's like, no. And she goes, why? And he's like, I don't know. I just was there to talk. I didn't think talking should call, he's just talking about talking. Someone got real annoyed that how often I said the word talking yesterday. They said that it became annoying and grating. And to that, I say, I was just trying to talk. And so he's just an open book, sipping his water. Hey, I'm going home tonight. Gonna probably play another little father-son golf tournament. Everything's feeling good. And Ed is just sitting there silent in this whole, I think he's probably just in his head working on his next line. Like, all right, you're not here to dance with us, George. You're not here to dance with us, George. And then the female detective, one of the last things she asks before she's going to tell him the big reveal is she says, maybe is the reason that you didn't call 911 is because you were leaving there and you thought to yourself, she got what she deserved. Is that what you were thinking, George? Kind of thinking, maybe she deserved to get roughed up a little bit. And George, as you probably guessed, was like, no, I was just trying to talk. And then you can tell the female detective is ready for the big reveal. She doesn't have any more questions. He answered all the questions that they needed to put him away for, even if she wasn't dead, for a really long time. And so she asks Ed, "Do you have any more questions?" And she turns to George, and she goes, "Well, I got to tell you something, George." And George's life is about ready to take a nosedive with this news. And the female detective goes, I got to tell you something, George. And then right at the big, the timing of the whole thing was perfect. And right when she's about to do the big reveal, Ed just, I don't know, he couldn't help himself or something. He just jumps in and goes, I think I know why you took the computer, George. And he like launches into his computer theory again. And it's like, Ed, we're not here to solve the computer issue. He already admitted that he took the computer because he wanted collateral so she would have to talk to him. That makes perfect sense. You can't delete emails from one computer, Ed. Ed. So at the female detective's big moment, she timed this whole thing right. Like, I got to tell you something. I think I know why you stole the computer. And then it was just like, what? And then Ed realizes what he did, and he's like, oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead, to the female detective. And she looks at George and says, she's dead. You killed her. You killed her, George. And George, for the first time, George is going from like, yeah, like I just love yachts, He goes from that posture of like, I'm probably going to be on a yacht in the next couple months to just, she goes, she's dead. You killed her. You killed her, George. And George is sitting there. He's going like this. And George's first words of his new life are, he goes, she's dad? And then the female detective goes, I think you knew that. And that's very important, because if they can prove that it's a lot different charge from if he knew she was dead, if he planned for it, it's first degree murder if he planned it, all the way down to possible manslaughter if it was just a drunken accident. And so her first question, he asked if she's dad. And then the female detective goes, I think you knew that. And then he goes, no, I did not. No, I did not. And then he goes into shock, basically. He goes, she's dad? And then he's just, how the is she dad? And this is some of the best timing, and I don't know if she planned this answer or if she's just good, but Huguely goes, how the is she dad? And just without missing a beat, the female detective goes, 'cause you killed her, George. And then again, Huguely goes, how the is she dead? And then just a perfect timing, 'cause you killed her, George. How is she dead? 'Cause you killed her. How is she dead? 'Cause you killed her. And it's just great timing. What a badass she is. Just 'cause you killed her, George. You killed her. And in that silence of her just nailing those lines, you couldn't write this if you're writing a comedy interrogation movie. She kills those lines, and in the silence, while the kind of brilliance of the whole thing that she had just done is sitting there in the room, Ed, who hasn't said anything in a while, just goes, we're not here for any reason, George. And it's just ignored by everybody in the room. We're not here for any reason, George. We're not here for any reason is possibly simultaneously the dumbest and most profound thing I've ever heard anyone say. It's perfect. We're not here for any reason, George. If someone is annoying me at the airport later today, I'm just going to go, we're not here for any reason. And they're just going to be like, what? And I'll be like, I do have to check my pictures. My friend Schmida called, and we're not here for any reason. So thank you. So Ed, just at the big moment, the big reveal, just blew it. We're not here for any reason, George. The female detective doesn't acknowledge it. George doesn't acknowledge it. And then, in the silence of that line tanking, George again, or Ed again, launches into the computer theory. He's like, I think I know why you took the computer, George, didn't you? Is it because there's threats that you said you were going to kill her in an email? And George is like, it was just a heat of the moment email. And Ed was like, well, wasn't last night heat of the moment? Which is a good point, Ed. And then finally, on like the fifth try, Ed gets it right. And he goes, while George is sitting there going, she's not dad. She's not dad. She's not dad. Tell me she's not dad. He over and over again. She's not dad. Tell me she's not dad. I didn't hit her. I didn't strike her. She's not dad. Tell me she's not dad. He's really convinced that she's not dad. And so Ed is just like, I know why you took the computer. And it's like, why are you talking about the computer? What he said makes sense. He wanted to take the computer so she would have to talk to him the next day. We figured out the computer theory, Ed. So Ed's launching back in. And finally he gets the, you're not here to dance with us, George. You're here because she's dead. Good job, Ed. You did it, man. I actually kind of like Ed as this whole thing went on. I've flubbed lines when I've needed to nail it in my life, so I get it. And then I think it's just notable that I don't think that George is faking as far as not knowing that she was dead. And I always say you can't act innocent, or you can't say he was in there and he knew that she was dead and he had planned to kill her before, but now he's going to pretend that it was a drunken accident. Watch the last 15 minutes of that interrogation, and that would be the commitment that you would have to do to pull off acting it out. And it would just, like, compare Dahlia to learning that her husband is dead versus Georgie learning that Yardley's dead. Dahlia was just like, oh my God, like wanted a hug. The cop was like, get away from me, bitch. She's like, maybe for what, 30 seconds? And then once she was in the interrogation, it just was like, yeah, I don't know. He was a crackhead, and she was just like talking normal. George doesn't get over it. They're asking him questions like, okay, George, let's go back to the beginning. That's what Ed says. Well, while George is like in shock, just going, she's not dad. Tell me she's not dad. Tell me she's not dad. She can't be dad. She's not dad. Ed goes, let's go back to the beginning, George. And George just ignores him and is just she's not dad. There's no way she's dad. She's no way she's dad. He is freaking out. And the female detective is realizing that he's starting to freak out pretty bad. And if you look at it, she makes a little hand gesture to Ed. And Ed just stands up and goes, okay, it's just protocol. We got to cuff you. So they both stand up and they both go over to George. And, George behind the back, but he's freaking. He's saying, tell me she's not dad. Tell me she's not dad. Tell me she's not dad. She's not dad. Tell me she's not dad. And the female detective is staring. If you look at it, she's staring at Ed handcuffing him while saying, calm down, George, calm down. She's staring at his wrists being handcuffed. Calm down, George, calm down. And as soon as the last handcuff clicks and she knows his hands aren't free, she just goes, I wish I could tell you that she's not dead. 22, George, 22 years old, and her life is gone. And George just goes, kill me. Kill me. And it's like, well, we can't, George. And he rambles about how she's not dad. Definitely not dad. Yeah, I'm not going to go word for word through the whole thing because it's just him in shock. He just blew a gasket. He blows a gasket and just gets stuck on repeat. He just can't handle, because he knows. He knows his ability to throw a little ball in a net is not going to get him out of this one. He knows that George Huguely the Fourth's team of lawyers isn't going to get him out of this one. And the interrogation ends, or at least the clip that we get to watch ends with him just head down, screaming, she's not dead, she's not dead, she's not dead. Just scream crying. We got a scream cry. He was honest, but he was scream crying. And the gasket is blown, he's stuck on repeat, and the interrogation ends right there. We're not here for any reason, I'll tell you that, George. And the case was pretty uneventful. The court case, the big thing was whether the charge, what is it going to be, manslaughter or a murder? He took a second-degree murder, and I think for that, instead of getting 26 years, he got 23 years without the possibility of parole. So he's in without the possibility of parole, and the last thing to maybe watch as a wrap-up to this whole nightmare case is they interviewed his mom years later. Could be pretty recently, I should have looked, but they interviewed his mom. And I've said it many times, parents are going to stick with their kids, and I don't fault them for that. But to see just she's talking about him like he's in college, which is sad. It's also real delusional and kind of messed up. But it's like the first interview with Mrs. Huguely, and she's like, says all the things like the love family. I can't, I'm so sorry this happened. But she's convinced that since it was a total accident, which I don't think it was, he had emailed her, I'm going to kill you. And then he had drank enough alcohol, which was his choice, where he just is a blacked out murderer. And you got to take a little bit of responsibility if you're going to drink 48 beers in one day. And but she thinks that it should have been the lesser charge of second-degree manslaughter, and she wants him resentenced or anything. But the notable part of that is the way that she describes his life. She's like, yeah, he has a roommate, and he's got a job. He wipes the tables. Cool job. He wipes the tables down in the pod, and he plays cards, and it's just like he doesn't have a roommate. That's a cellmate. He doesn't have a room. He's not there for any reason, lady. But I think that wraps it up on old George Huguely the Fifth. I'm rushing out of town, so if I did leave out some major detail as this case wraps up, please leave it in the comments so people know. I'm headed to Arizona later. to hang out with my grandma who turns 90. I'm excited. It's going to be fun. But yeah, I hope you guys have a good week. Oh, yeah, I was going to say to get people through, since I'm not going to post today or tomorrow, I do have a comedy channel. A lot of people have been finding it already. But to get you through, if you want to, my real name is Scott Sharp. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Scott. But my real name's Scott Sharp. My comedy channel, if you just search Scott Sharp Comedy, or I'll put a link in the description. So go check out some comedy, subscribe to that channel. I might do, if I can figure out how to just post from my phone, I might post a few videos from Arizona on that channel. I think I want to keep this channel mostly just true crime and not a bunch of other stuff. But anyway, thank you to everybody that supports me in all the ways possible to support me. You guys are so great. I'm going to miss you. True Crime Loser out. Shamita. Stiven?